The training facility hummed with the peculiar frequency that only comes from 100 different species trying not to accidentally kill each other. I stood in the observation deck, my sensory stalks twitching with what humans would call amusement, watching the latest batch of recruits stumble through basic threat assessment protocols. 10 credits, says the Vorthian breaks formation first. My colleague Kelvin muttered beside me, his translator chip rendering his clicks into passable standard. 20 says the human does something stupid before that happens. We both knew I was going to win. Humans always did something stupid. That is what made them simultaneously the most frustrating and most valuable assets in the Galactic Defense Corps. The human in question was named Maya Torres. Average height for her species, dark hair pulled back in what they called a ponytail, and eyes that seemed to absorb every detail of her surroundings without moving much. She had been in the program for 6 weeks now, and her scores were, well, adequate, not spectacular, not terrible, just solidly, frustratingly, average, which is why what happened next should not have been possible. Instructor Vrell, a 4-armed Catherian with a reputation for breaking recruits like ceramic dishes, was running the standard distraction drill. The concept was simple, almost insultingly so. Maintain focus on your assigned task, while the environment attempts to derail your concentration. Loud noises, flashing lights, the occasional small explosion. Standard stuff, really. Maya had been assigned scanner duty, the most boring job in the entire Corps, and coincidentally, the most important. A scanner operator who missed a threat signature could doom an entire fleet. So they needed to be unshakable, immovable, basically, they needed to be the exact opposite of human. Begin Protocol 7, Vrell announced, her voice carrying across the training bay like a sonic weapon. The scanners lit up. 37 screens, each displaying a different sector of simulated space. Maya's job was identify any anomalous readings within a 10-minute window. Her fellow recruits were doing various other tasks. The Vorthian, as predicted, was already sweating through his environmental suit. 2 minutes in, Vrell activated the first distraction, a sonic pulse that made my sensory stalks curl inward protectively. Several recruits flinched. Maya's eyes never left her screens. 4 minutes. Strobe lights joined the noise. The Vorthian made a small whimpering sound. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. 6 minutes. Smoke began filling the chamber. Not enough to be dangerous, but enough to make visibility a joke. Maya reached up, wiped her screens with her sleeve without looking away, and kept working. She is doing well, Kelvin observed, surprise coloring his tone. Wait for it, I replied. Because I knew Vrell, and Vrell did not do predictable. At 7 minutes and 33 seconds, the instructor moved. Her forearms became a blur of motion, and suddenly she was holding a combat blade. The kind with a monomolecular edge that could slice through most known materials like they were made of thought. She threw it. Not at the wall. Not at the floor. Directly at Maya Torres. The correct response, according to protocol, was to dive for cover and sound the alarm. The acceptable response was to freeze and let your combat training take over. The human response was usually to scream and make the situation worse. Maya did none of these things. Her left hand shot up. Not in a defensive gesture, not in panic. Just up, casual as swatting an insect, and she caught the blade by its handle. Caught it. Mid-flight, without looking. While her other hand continued scrolling through scanner data like absolutely nothing had happened. The training bay went silent. Even the artificial alarms seemed to pause in confusion. Distraction detected, Maya said calmly, her eyes still locked on her screens. Sector 4 has an anomalous reading. Possible stealth signature. Flagging for analysis. She set the blade down on her console, kept working. I looked at Kelvin. Kelvin looked at me. His mandibles hung open in a way that would have been comical if I was not equally stunned. That, Kelvin said slowly, should not be possible. No, I agreed. It should not. Vrell stood frozen, all forearms still extended from the throw. In my 15 cycles working with her, I had never seen the instructor caught off guard. She prided herself on being 3 steps ahead of every recruit, every scenario, every possible outcome. Maya Torres had just rewritten the manual. Recruit Torres, Vrell said, her voice tight with something I could not quite identify. You just caught a combat blade without breaking concentration on your task. Yes, instructor. Maya's fingers kept moving across her screens. That level of reflexive response combined with maintained focus is, according to every psychological profile we have, contradictory. Humans cannot multitask at that level. Your brain architecture does not support it. Respectfully, instructor, my brain was not involved. Maya finally looked up, and there was something in her expression that made my sensory stalks prickle with instinctive wariness. The task was to maintain scanner focus, despite distractions. You threw a blade. I removed the distraction. The task continued. You could have been killed, but I was not. The simplicity of it was somehow more unsettling than if she had launched into some elaborate explanation. She had assessed, acted, continued, like it was the most natural thing in the universe. Vrell walked closer, her eyes, all 6 of them, fixed on the human. Where did you train before joining the Corps? I did not. Military background? No, instructor. Enhanced reflexes? Genetic modification? Neural implants? No, instructor. Vrell's primary arms crossed while her secondary arms gestured in frustration. Then how? Maya tilted her head, considering. I have 3 younger brothers. The silence stretched. Kelvin made a sound like a malfunctioning air recycler. I was pretty sure I did too. Explain, Vrell demanded. Growing up, they thought it was funny to throw things at me while I did homework. Books, toys. Once, a fairly large reptile native to our region, you learn to catch things without looking, or you fail algebra. I preferred not failing. You developed combat-level reflexes because of sibling pranks. I developed situational awareness, Maya corrected. The reflexes were just a bonus. I leaned over to Kelvin. Are all human families like this? I am beginning to think we do not want to know. Vrell circled Maya like a predator studying prey. Your scanner reading. The anomaly in Sector 4. Explain your analysis. Finally, Maya showed something other than calm competence. Her face lit up with what humans called enthusiasm, and I felt a chill run through my vascular system. Enthusiastic humans were dangerous humans. The signature is displaced by 0.003 standard units from where it should be if it was genuine background radiation. It is moving, but only just. Something is using a stealth field, but the field itself is creating a void that the scanners can detect if you know what to look for. Based on the size of the displacement, I would estimate a mid-sized scout vessel, probably Crovar design based on the signature profile. Vrell's expression shifted. If I had to guess, I would say it moved from skepticism to interest, with a brief stop at concern. The Crovar signature was added to the simulation 3 days ago, the instructor said slowly. It is deliberately hidden in sensor noise that requires advanced filtering to detect. Most experienced scanner operators miss it on their first attempt. It helps if you grew up watching for things that do not quite fit, Maya said. My youngest brother once hid in a laundry basket for 4 hours waiting to jump out at me. You learn to notice when the shadows are wrong. Your brothers sound terrifying, Kelvin whispered. I am starting to understand why humans are classified as a Tier 3 threat species, I whispered back. Vrell held up one hand and the training simulation ended. The lights normalized. The smoke cleared. The other recruits, who had all stopped their tasks to watch the exchange, suddenly remembered they were supposed to be working and scrambled back to their stations. Recruit Torres, report to my office at 1900 hours. We need to discuss your training trajectory. Yes, instructor. Vrell walked away, but not before I caught the expression on her face. It was the look of someone who had just discovered a weapon they did not know existed, and was trying to figure out how to use it without blowing up the armory. The other recruits finished their tasks in a daze. The Vorthian had indeed broken formation, but nobody cared anymore. All eyes kept drifting back to Maya, who had returned to her scanner analysis like she had not just fundamentally altered everyone's understanding of human capabilities. When the session ended and the recruits filed out, Kelvin and I remained in the observation deck. 20 credits, I said. You owe me. That was not stupid, Kelvin protested. That was, I do not even know what that was. Precisely. Stupid would have been predictable. We watched through the window as Maya walked across the bay, stopping briefly to return Vrell's blade to the equipment rack. Proper procedure. Calm. Efficient. I need to update the human threat assessment, Kelvin said quietly. Again? Again. This was the 4th time this cycle. Every time we thought we understood human capabilities, one of them did something that required rewriting the manual. It was exhausting. Do you think she knows? Kelvin asked. That what she did should be impossible. I considered this. I think humans have a fundamentally different definition of impossible than the rest of us. That is what worries me. Down in the bay, Maya had stopped to help the Vorthian with his equipment. The larger alien was clearly embarrassed, his scales flushed with the color that indicated shame in his species. But Maya just smiled, said something we could not hear, and showed him the proper way to calibrate his harness. The Vorthian's color shifted to something closer to gratitude. She is going to be trouble, I said. All humans are trouble. Yes, but this one is going to be interesting trouble. Is there a difference? I thought about the blade, the casual catch, the absolute lack of ego in her explanation, the way she had turned a moment that should have been career-ending into a teaching moment. With her, I think there might be. The mess hall at 1930 hours was never truly empty, but it achieved a kind of peaceful lull between the dinner rush and the night shift changeover. I found myself there, pretending to enjoy a nutrient supplement that tasted like recycled Starship hull, watching Maya Torres sit alone at a corner table. She was reading an actual physical book, the kind made from pressed plant matter that humans inexplicably still preferred over data tablets. Every few moments she would take a bite of something that looked vaguely threatening, chew thoughtfully, and turn a page. You are staring, Kelvin said, materializing beside me with his own tray of questionable nutrition. I am observing. You have been observing for 3 days straight. It is getting weird. He was not wrong. Ever since the incident with the blade, I had found myself tracking Maya's movements through the facility, not officially, of course, just casual monitoring. Professional interest, the kind of interest that absolutely did not involve pulling her entire personnel file and reading it 4 times. Did you know she scored in the 32nd percentile on the initial combat assessments? I said. Kelvin settled into his seat with a sound like grinding gravel. And yet she caught a thrown blade without blinking. Exactly. Her psychological profile lists her as mild-mannered, low aggression index, preference for analytical problem-solving over direct confrontation. And yet, we sat in silence, 2 intelligence analysts slowly realizing that our entire framework for understanding humans might be fundamentally flawed. It was not a comfortable feeling. She has not told anyone, Kelvin observed, about the blade catch. The other recruits talk about it constantly, but she acts like it never happened. Humans call that humility. We call it suspicious behavior. Before I could respond, Instructor Vrell entered the mess hall. The ambient noise level dropped by approximately 40%, which was standard when predators entered spaces full of prey. She scanned the room, her 6 eyes processing visual data faster than most species could think, and locked onto Maya's table. This should be interesting, I murmured. Vrell walked directly to Maya's corner. The human looked up from her book, showed no visible sign of concern, and simply waited. Good instincts. When a superior officer approaches, you do not panic. You present yourself as ready and attentive. Recruit Torres. Instructor Vrell. Maya closed her book, marking her place with what appeared to be a pressed flower. Interesting detail. Sentimental items were allowed but uncommon among recruits. May I sit? Now that was unusual. Vrell did not ask permission. Vrell gave orders, and reality rearranged itself to comply. Of course, Instructor. Vrell folded her considerable frame onto the bench across from Maya. For a moment neither spoke. The tension in the mess hall had become thick enough to measure with standard instruments. I have been reviewing your file, Vrell said finally. I assumed you would. Your test scores are unremarkable. Your physical capabilities are within human standard parameters. Your background contains nothing that would predict exceptional performance under stress. Maya nodded slowly. That sounds accurate. So explain to me how you caught that blade. I already did. My brothers prepared me well for random projectiles. Vrell's secondary arms twitched, a sign of agitation in her species. I do not believe that explanation is complete. It is the truth. Truth can be incomplete. Maya considered this, her human face going through a series of micro-expressions I had learned to recognize as deep thought. Finally, she said something that made my sensory stalks stand straight up. When I was 12 standard years old, my youngest brother Danny fell through ice on a frozen pond near our home. This was not what anyone expected. Kelvin leaned forward unconsciously. Across the mess hall, other species who had been pretending not to listen stopped even pretending. I was on the shore. My other brothers were farther away. The ice was breaking, and Danny could not swim well. Every adult who taught survival skills said the same thing. Do not go onto unstable ice. Call for help. Wait for rescue equipment. But you went in anyway, Vrell said. It was not a question. No. Maya's voice was soft but clear. I did not go in. Going in would have meant 2 people drowning instead of 1. That would have been stupid. Then what did you do? I assessed. The ice was breaking from his weight in one location, but it was holding at the edges. I distributed my weight, moved to the strongest point, extended a branch I found on the shore, got him to grab it, pulled him out. You were 12. Yes. And you chose tactical thinking over emotional response. I chose to save my brother. The method was just logistics. Vrell leaned back, all 4 arms crossing in a gesture I had learned meant she was processing something significant. You understand that what you describe is not normal human behavior. Your species is notorious for emotional decision-making, particularly in crisis situations involving family members. Maya smiled, and there was something in that expression that was not quite sad and not quite proud. Instructor, emotional decisions and effective decisions are not always opposites. I wanted Danny to live. That emotion made me focus, made me think clearly, made me refuse to accept failure. So you are saying the emotional response enhanced your capabilities? I am saying that humans are very good at caring about things, and when we care, we find ways to succeed that do not exist in your tactical manuals. The mess hall had gone completely silent now. Even the food processors seemed to have paused their humming. Vrell studied Maya for a long moment. Command is considering moving you to advanced training. Accelerated track. You would be working with operatives who have decades of experience. Because I caught a knife? Because you represent something we have not fully accounted for in our integration protocols. Human unpredictability combined with human determination. It is a combination that wins battles. Maya set down her utensil carefully. With respect, Instructor, I do not want to win battles. I want to prevent them. That is why I joined scanner operations. Early detection means fewer conflicts, fewer deaths. Noble sentiment. Practical sentiment. I have 3 brothers who joined the colony fleet. I would prefer they come home alive. And there it was. The thing I had been trying to identify since reviewing her file. Maya Torres was not here for glory or advancement, or even particularly for the generous compensation package the Corps offered. She was here because people she cared about were in danger, and she had decided, with that peculiar human stubbornness, to do something about it. Your brothers are lucky to have you, Vrell said. They are annoying and loud and once convinced me that vegetables could scream. I am lucky to have them. Vrell actually laughed. A deep, rumbling sound that I had heard exactly twice in 15 cycles. I am going to recommend you for the advanced program. You will hate it. The training is brutal, the hours are terrible, and your social life will essentially cease to exist. Will I be good at it? I have no idea. You should not have been able to do what you did 3 days ago. By all conventional analysis, you should wash out in the first week. But, Maya prompted, but humans do not operate by conventional analysis, and I have learned that betting against human stubbornness is a poor investment strategy. Maya picked up her book, that small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. I will think about it. You have until 0600 tomorrow to decide. That is not much thinking time. No, Vrell agreed, standing. But I suspect you made your decision the moment I sat down. She walked away, leaving Maya alone with her book and her thoughts. The mess hall gradually returned to normal noise levels, though I noticed several species continuing to watch the human with newfound awareness. We need to update the assessment again, Kelvin said. What are we supposed to write? Warning, humans may exceed all reasonable expectations when properly motivated by familial affection. It sounds ridiculous when you say it like that. It sounds ridiculous regardless of how I say it. We watched Maya return to her reading. Whatever the book contained, it apparently required significant concentration, because she did not look up again for the remainder of our observation period. Do you think she will accept? Kelvin asked. The advanced program? Definitely. How can you be certain? I gestured toward Maya with one of my sensory stalks. Because she has 3 brothers in the colony fleet, and accepting that position means she will have more influence over threat assessment protocols, more ability to catch problems before they become casualties. She is not going to pass that up. That assumes she succeeds in the program. She caught a blade mid-flight while reading scanner data. I think we can safely assume success is likely. Kelvin made a sound that might have been agreement or indigestion. With his species, it was difficult to tell. The other humans in the program are going to complicate things. He was right about that. We currently had 47 humans scattered across various core divisions. Each one was a unique study in controlled chaos. Adding Maya to the mix, especially in an advanced role, was going to create interesting dynamics. Do you remember Specialist Kirk? I asked. The one who fixed a plasma conduit by hitting it with a wrench? That is the one. Imagine Maya and Kirk working together. Kelvin's color shifted to something that indicated existential dread. We should request transfer. To where? Humans are spreading through the entire defensive network. There is nowhere left to run. Poetic, really. We spent 3 centuries convinced we were the dominant intelligence in the galaxy, and then humans showed up and politely proved us wrong by being completely unreasonable. I watched Maya turn another page. Not unreasonable, just operating from different base assumptions, which are that impossible is a suggestion, not a limitation. At 0558 the next morning, Maya Torres presented herself at Instructor Vrell's office. She carried a small bag containing her personal effects, wore a clean uniform, and showed no signs of the late night I knew she must have had. Humans required approximately 8 hours of rest per cycle, and she had been in the training simulators until well past midnight. I knew because I had been monitoring, for professional reasons. Obvious. Vrell opened her door before Maya could knock. Prompt. Good. You will need that. I accept the position, Maya said simply. I assumed you would. Your quarters have been reassigned. Training begins at 0700. Do not be late. I will not be. Maya turned to leave, then paused. Instructor, the blade you threw, was the safety locked? Vrell's expression was completely neutral. What do you think? I think if it was locked, you would have said so immediately to avoid a safety violation report. I think it was not locked. I think you threw a live blade at a recruit to see what would happen. And if I did, then I think you already knew I would catch it. Or at least you suspected I could. Which means you saw something in my file or my performance that made you willing to risk that test. Interesting theory. Is it correct? Vrell's 6 eyes glittered with something that might have been respect. Get to your new quarters, Specialist Torres. You have 45 minutes before training, and you will want to meet your team before the first simulation. Maya smiled, nodded, and walked away. I looked at Kelvin. She just got promoted 2 full ranks in less than a week. Human unpredictability, Kelvin said, as if that explained everything. Perhaps it did. Below us, Maya Torres walked through the corridors of the training facility, past species from 100 different worlds, all of whom were slowly learning the same lesson we had learned. Humans were not the strongest species, not the fastest, not the most technologically advanced or psychically gifted, but they had something that no amount of conventional analysis could properly quantify. They had 3 younger brothers who threw things. They had frozen ponds and impossible choices. They had the absolute conviction that caring about something was not a weakness but a weapon, and they were absolutely terrifying because of it. "I am updating her file again," Kelvin said. "Add a note," I suggested. "Warning, exceeds all reasonable expectations. Handle with care." That could apply to every human. Exactly. In the distance, Maya disappeared around a corner, heading toward whatever new challenges waited. Somewhere in the colony fleet, 3 brothers were probably getting into some kind of trouble, completely unaware that their sister had just changed the course of galactic military doctrine by catching a knife and refusing to quit her homework. That seemed very human. Somehow, the scanner had flared distraction detected. She had caught the blade and kept working, and in doing so she had shown us all that humanity's greatest strength was not in their technology or their tactics. It was in their absolute refusal to let distractions, whether thrown blades or impossible odds, stop them from completing the task. The task, as always, continued.